RCLONE and Restic are two of the best command line programs for backup. So which is better, and which should you choose for your backup solution? Well, that's what I'll help you decide. In this video, we'll be looking at both programs, their features, and compare the two. Later, I'll show you what a complete backup and restore setup could look like for each program on Windows. I've got full guides on both RCLONE and Restic, so if you want to learn how to use them when you're done here, check out those videos. Links will be in the description. Let's start with RCLONE. So RCLONE is a backup and sync program that you can use to back up to USB storage, network storage, and to the cloud. It supports backing up to a wide range of cloud services such as Amazon S3, Backblaze B2, Google Drive, Microsoft Azure, and more, along with protocols such as FTP, SFTP, SMB, WebDAV. You can even create your own HTTP file server, FTP server, or WebDAV server. RCLONE has two main commands, the copy command and the sync command. The copy command will copy files from the source to the destination, only adding new and updated files. The sync command will add, update, and remove files from the destination to match the source. So if you remove a file, the next time you sync, it will be removed from the destination. RCLONE also supports two-way or bidirectional sync. With RCLONE, you can set up what are called remotes. For example, you can set up an Amazon S3 remote, name it something like S3. You can then use that remote to back up and restore from Amazon S3. Like shown here. The RCLONE config command allows you to easily set up a new remote and connect to cloud services. Just give it a name, tell RCLONE which cloud service or protocol you want to use for the remote, like Amazon, and depending on the cloud service provider, RCLONE will walk you through the setup process to properly configure the remote so that you can use it to back up or restore. With RCLONE, you can even do cloud-to-cloud backup. RCLONE provides other general file management commands for creating folders, moving, and deleting files. One of my favorite features is the ability to mount a drive, network, or cloud storage in the file browser using the mount command. I've mounted my Amazon S3 remote to letter drive S, and I can now browse all of my buckets. This makes it very easy to restore files from the cloud. You can even combine multiple clouds and access them from a single Explorer window using RCLONE's Combine or Union feature. In this case, I've combined my Google Drive and Amazon S3 accounts into one, where I can browse each individual service files in File Explorer. RCLONE has a WebUI that you can use to manage your backup remotes. You can get a summary of your connections, update or create new remotes, browse your remotes, download or share a file, and you can mount a remote. You can't actually run your backups from this interface, but it at least provides a quicker way to do some things without needing to always use the command line. Let's talk about Restic. So Restic is a backup program similar to RCLONE. You can back up to hard drives, network storage, and to the cloud, and it's command line based. But it's a little different in that Restic is specifically built for backup. It doesn't have any general purpose file management features like copying or moving outside of managing the backups themselves. Restic backups are called repositories. And when you create your repository, you'll be prompted to enter a password. The password that you create when making the repository is the only way to access the data in the backup. Here I've created the media backup repository on my E drive. Restic uses a highly advanced backup structure that's efficient and reliable. Unlike with RCLONE, when you back up using Restic, the files are not simply copied to the destination. Each file backed up is cut up into chunks called packs. All Restic repositories are self-contained, meaning they don't require files scattered across the PC for Restic to work with them. This also makes them extremely portable. You can take one Restic repository created on Windows, put it on a USB, stick it in a Linux machine, and if it has Restic installed, you can continue to back up or restore data from that backup. Restic supports versioning in the form of snapshots. Each time you back up, Restic will keep track of all the file changes. You can then go back in time and restore files from a previous snapshot. Restic supports deduplication, so files that were already backed up will not be backed up again. Restic doesn't just check file names, file types, and size, or other metadata. It actually checks the files down to the bytes. So even if you rename a file or move the source of your backup files, they won't be added again. This is a great cost savings feature, especially when it comes to cloud backup. This also makes subsequent backups much faster if you've only added or modified a couple of files. I continue to back up my videos folder, and the backup happens instantly because I haven't added or changed anything in my videos folder. And now I have 4 snapshots. The size of my videos folder is roughly 57 megs, and the repository has a size of 55 megs, despite the fact that I've backed up multiple times. Thanks to deduplication, those files in the videos folder were only stored once in the backup. You may be wondering why the media backup isn't also 57 megs. Well, that's because Restic supports compression. So Restic has compression, allowing you to save space on your backup media. This is especially useful when backing up to the cloud, where cost is a big factor. I've backed up my documents folder, which has a size of 4 megs. Restic cut it down to 3.7 megs in the backup. Compression is a newer feature in Restic, and it works pretty well, though compression efficiency will depend on the type of files you're backing up. Compression works best with document type files, but not media files such as audio and video. Restic has a search feature that allows you to search files within the backup. For backups with millions of files, this feature is a godsend. You can search for files in the backup using the find command, and then specify what you want to look for. I'll look for spreadsheets, and it found these files and folders related to the term spreadsheets. It also tells you the snapshot ID that you can use to reference in case you want to restore from that specific snapshot. In addition, you can search a specific snapshot by referencing its ID with the S option. And again, I found what I'm looking for. This find command also works with file patterns. So let's say I wanted to search for all MP4 files in my media backup. I could do find star.mp4. And this will look in the repository and find all snapshots that have MP4 files. I've gone ahead and backed up my documents folder into my media backup. And I'd like to talk about the forget and prune commands. So Restic will never permanently delete files from a backup unless you explicitly use a combination of the forget and prune command. The forget command is used to remove snapshots, and the prune command is used to permanently delete the data from those deleted snapshots. When you use the forget command, you need to specify one or more snapshots to remove, or one of the many retention policy options Restic includes, such as keep last, and maybe a number. And this will tell Restic to keep the 3 most recent snapshots for a given path. So keep the latest 3 snapshots that have the path gray videos, and keep the latest 3 snapshots that have the path gray documents. Or you can use, like mentioned, the snapshot ID. Now that snapshot is gone, but remember that data is still in the repository. Or I could use forget, and let's do keep last. I'll keep the last 2 snapshots. There's a lot of retention policy options that you can use with the forget command. This is most effective when used with Windows Task Scheduler when setting up your automatic backups. You can keep hourly snapshots, daily snapshots, weekly, monthly, yearly, and so on. Every once in a while, you're going to want to run that prune command. And we see it went ahead and permanently deleted 3.7 megs, which we know to be the document snapshot. On Mac and Linux systems, Restic has the ability to mount your backups using the mount command. This creates a read-only file system where you can go through, browse your snapshots, all organized by date. You can go through, look at your files, open them up, or copy them to your system. So this is a much easier and quicker way to restore data from your backups. Unfortunately, this feature does not yet exist in the Windows version of Restic. Now that we're familiar with RCLONE and Restic's unique features, let's look at the features they share and compare them. There are many ways to install RCLONE and Restic. Typically, I just download the exes off the GitHub page, throw them in a bin folder, and add that folder to my system path. That's a bit old-fashioned, and RCLONE and Restic have easier ways of installation. For example, for RCLONE, you can use Winget, Chocolatey, or the Scoop package managers to install it. Restic can also be installed with Scoop, and they both can be installed with Winget UI, which is perhaps the easiest way to install. Once installed, you should be able to use the RCLONE or Restic command and get a list of commands you can use. RCLONE and Restic commands are simple and easy to learn. And once you have a backup command set up, you can copy it into a batch file or PowerShell script and run the script manually anytime you want. If ever you need help with the command, you can type in the name of the program, the command, and then -H. And this will give you all the information you need about how to use the command along with all of its options. It's the same for both Restic and RCLONE. RCLONE and Restic supports backing up to pretty much every major cloud service provider. However, RCLONE supports more services and protocols than Restic does. But here's the thing. If you have both RCLONE and Restic installed on the same system, Restic can use RCLONE to back up to services that Restic doesn't support. For example, it is not possible to directly back up to Google Drive with Restic. However, using the RCLONE backend feature, I can create a repository on my Google Drive account. Using the RCLONE keyword and specifying a remote, in this case G Drive, which is what I called my Google Drive account, and then point to a folder on my Google Drive. I have a folder here called Backups, and I will call my repository test backup in it. And this will go ahead and create the backup repository on my Google Drive account. It's complete. Inside the backups folder, I see test backup and all the Restic files. Now all I have to do is specify what I want to back up. And now I can back up with Restic to Google Drive and get all the features such as compression, deduplication, and versioning. For RCLONE, you got Amazon S3 or S3 compatible, Backblaze, Box, Dropbox, Google Cloud Storage, Google Drive, Google Photos, Microsoft Azure, SugarSync, protocols such as HTTP, FTP, SFTP. For Restic, you got SFTP, Amazon S3, Wasabi, Backblaze, Google Cloud Storage, Microsoft Azure, REST Server. One thing to note though with Restic is that it cannot do cloud-to-cloud backup, and all source files must come from either the PC, USB storage, or network storage. RCLONE and Restic support strong encryption. With RCLONE, you can create an encrypted remote whereby when you copy files to the destination, they'll be obfuscated and you will be required to access them through RCLONE and provide a password to decrypt the files. For RCLONE, encryption is optional. With Restic backups, all backups are encrypted by default, and the only way to access the data is with the password you created when making the repository. Losing that password means the data is gone forever. Each program has documentation on how their encryption works, and there's extensive documentation for Restic on how its encryption works. Both programs have include and exclude filters that you can use to decide which files and folders get included in the backup and what doesn't. You can include these filters in the backup command itself, and they can be used multiple times, or by putting everything you want to include or exclude in your backup in a text file. For example, here's an include file which will tell Restic to back up my documents, pictures, music, and videos folder, and an exclude file which tells it not to back up these files or folders. Filters for both RCLONE and Restic support file patterns, so you could do star.mp4, and this will tell Restic to include all mp4 files. Or if you put it in the exclude file, it'll tell Restic not to back up any mp4 files. You'd use the files from option to point to your include in either iExclude or exclude file and point to your exclude text file. For RCLONE, you'll be using the filter from followed by a text file, and tell RCLONE which files you want to exclude from the backup, which files and folders you want to include. Now, the RCLONE filtering system takes a little longer to get used to since it uses its filters differently. RCLONE processes its filters from top to bottom, so in most cases you'll want to put what you don't want included in the backup first, and then what you do want included. This -*, which just tells RCLONE to ignore everything else in the backup source. Both programs provide a feature called dry run. This option allows you to test your backups before actually running them. This option can also be used for other commands, but it's most useful when testing your backups. It'll go through the motions of backing up, but not actually back up. And with Restic, it'll just tell you what would have happened if you ran the backup for real. With RCLONE, it'll tell you it's skipped because dry run is set. This is an extremely important option, especially for RCLONE when using the sync command. When using these programs for serious backup, I cannot stress enough how important it is to test your backups before running them, especially over the cloud. RCLONE and Restic do not have built-in scheduling systems for automatically running your backups. So on Windows, you'll need to utilize the Windows Task Scheduler to automate the backup. Easiest way to do this is to create a batch file or PowerShell script and creating a basic task, setting your parameters, such as when to back up, how often to back up, and then point to the script on your system. Both programs are incredibly fast. In fact, one of the reasons I stopped using graphical programs is because they're all slow and clunky. The only bottleneck you're going to see from either of these programs is going to be the storage media or your internet connection. I also like to mention that the RCLONE backend feature in Restic doesn't have any overhead. So if you use Restic to back up over RCLONE, you won't see any noticeable difference in speed. RCLONE and Restic are two of the most solid and reliable command line tools for backup. You do have to be more careful when using RCLONE and that sync command, but so long as you don't screw up, RCLONE won't let you down. Especially since for the most part, you will be using the copy command for backup. Both programs have ways that you can check the integrity of the backup with the check command. For RCLONE, check followed by the source and destination. And for Restic, you just run the check command against your repository. Restic even has a repair command that you can use to fix broken repositories. Both RCLONE and Restic are completely free and open source. No BS. No subscription, no premium or pro version, just straight up RCLONE and Restic. RCLONE and Restic have extensive documentation explaining how to use their various commands, how to back up to the cloud, and more. RCLONE's docs seems a bit more organized and user-friendly, as one can be for these type of programs. Unfortunately, the Restic documentation is rather disjointed, and I still have trouble finding some information quickly. Where's the list of environment variables? Maybe reference? Manual? Nope, under backing up. Since these are free and open source programs, you will need to rely on the communities for help. RCLONE and Restic have very active and friendly communities, and if you plan to use either of these programs for serious backup, I strongly suggest becoming a member to their respective forums. Every question or issue you can come up with has been asked and answered at least once on these forums. The developers of both RCLONE and Restic are quite active on these forums, so don't hesitate to ask for help. Both programs are regularly maintained and updated. New updates are released throughout the year and mostly include bug fixes. New and major features are rare, however. Because these are both command line programs, I thought it'd be helpful to show you what a basic backup and restore setup could look like. We'll start with RCLONE first. Here I have a folder called RCLONE example, with just two files, backup.bat. Inside my backup script, I'm telling RCLONE to back up from my C drive onto my Google Drive account in a folder called backup, and include or exclude files and folders from this text file, filter.txt. This ignore case just tells RCLONE to ignore case sensitivity, and VP to see the progress of what's happening. I also have pause just so the terminal doesn't exit when the script finishes. In filter.txt, I list the files and folders I don't want included in the backup and what I do. Let's put the videos in the mix. Notice I'm using the plus symbol to indicate that I want to include these paths. Minus symbol for excluding. To automate the process, I've created a basic task whereby every day at 12 a.m. we're going to run our RCLONE backup file. And so let's pretend that it's 12 a.m. and run our backup. Terminal opens up and we see it's transferring data. If I come over here to my Google Drive account under backup, I can see files being populated here. My documents, music, pictures, and videos all being backed up. The backup is complete, and if I look at my Google Drive account, I see everything's been uploaded. Now obviously Google Drive is a much easier interface that you can easily grab your files and whatnot. But if you're using something like Amazon S3 or Backblaze, this is not an option. Well, it is, but it's death. So let's say I wanted to restore from one of my RCLONE remotes. First I'll see what's inside. We see users, which basically mirrors my C drive. So I'll go ahead and restore this spreadsheets document. So in RCLONE, you would essentially use your destination as the source. So backup folder, and we'll use the copy command to copy our spreadsheets on our Google Drive account. And I'll copy this to my desktop in a folder called spreadsheets. And this went ahead and downloaded the spreadsheets folder from my Google Drive account. Let's check out a Restic setup. Here I have a folder called Restic example, and it contains 4 files. Backup script itself, my exclude text files, and a prune.bat. But before we begin, let's create the repository. I'm going to create it here on the E drive. And now, let's look at the backup file. I'm going to tell Restic to back up everything that's listed in this include.txt and exclude everything in this exclude.txt. And then after I'm done with the backup, I'm going to run the forget command and apply some retention policies. For this example, my retention policy is this. We're going to keep daily snapshots for 7 days, weekly snapshots for a month, and monthly snapshots for a year. Again, no data will be removed with the forget command. This is just going to help clean up our snapshots. In the include, I'm going to back up my documents, pictures, music, and videos again, and exclude these folders inside of documents and pictures. In this prune.bat file, we're just going to go ahead and clean up those snapshots and remove unwanted data. I'm going to have this run once a month on the 1st of every month. And all we do is run the prune command against the repository. To automate the process, I've created a Restic backup task, whereby, again, we'll back up every day at 12 a.m. and we're going to run our Restic backup bat. Now, I'm also going to run the prune script as a separate task, and I have that set to run at 3 a.m. on the 1st of every month. The prune command is a lot more taxing on the system and it's a much longer process, so we want to run this sparingly. So again, let's pretend it's 12 a.m. and back up these files to our thumb drive. Starts backing up. The backup is complete, and it also ran my retention policy, and so the backup was successful. Now let's look at restoring some data. So for Restic, let's get a list of our snapshots first. And let's just use the ID and see what's inside by using ls followed by the snapshot ID. If it's the last snapshot in the repository, you could also use latest. And it shows us all the files and folders in the backup. You could copy the path, and when you want to restore, we could use the restore command. Restore, and we can put the snapshot ID to restore the whole snapshot. In this first example, I want to restore the entire snapshot, so I'll just do latest and then tell Restic where I want to restore with the target option. And I'm going to restore to the desktop. And this goes ahead and restores our files. We've got all of our files restored. Now you may see these erroneous errors about system link. This has to do with the Windows built-in My Pictures and My Videos folder. You don't have to worry about that. And those errors can be ignored. What we care about is the fact that we were able to restore all of our files. You can modify the restore command to specify specific files or folders to restore instead of the entire snapshot with the include option. Input the path of the file or folder. So in this example, I'm telling Restic to restore from my latest snapshot, but only include the spreadsheets folder and save that to the desktop. See the file, and we have our spreadsheets folder back. So, in the battle between RCLONE versus Restic, which is best for backup? The answer? Restic. easily. Well, technically at least. At the end of the day, Restic is specifically designed for backup. Versioning, deduplication, and compression alone makes Restic the superior choice as a backup solution over RCLONE in most cases. If the question is which should you choose, well, that's going to depend on your needs. I personally use both RCLONE and Restic in my backup solution. I back up my media files to the cloud using RCLONE and documents with Restic. You'll have a much easier time accessing the files if you use RCLONE. Now, if you choose RCLONE to back up to multiple locations, RCLONE could be suitable. It is possible to do versioning with RCLONE, but it requires more scripting and programming knowledge. Restic is a safer option though. You can never accidentally delete backup files with Restic, and it has safeguards in place for such things such as the forget command. Even if you use the forget command on the wrong snapshot, the data can be recovered using the recover command. With RCLONE, if you're not super careful and test your commands properly, especially when using the sync command, you can irreversibly delete your entire source or backup destination. Again, I've done full guides on both RCLONE and Restic, so if you want to learn more on how to use them, check out those videos. If you like my content, consider becoming a YouTube member, get early access to new content, or consider becoming a Patreon member and get access to exclusive content too hot for YouTube.